everyone, it's Ryan Fowler here with Tim Costello, Inner Game Group Live. We don't know where Jordan is. We thought he was coming. Maybe he'll come later. But Tim and I are here. And today, very good episode. We're going to continue this Diary of a CEO interview with Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's going to be very interesting because he uses what I view as kind of a roundabout, less concentrated version of what we use. He helps a lot of people with his methods. I think Joe is the real deal. But we're going to end up having a discussion today on the neuroscience of superneuroplasticity, of how to actually change your brain. Joe is using these methods. He's just not concentrating it as nearly as much as he could, but overall he's doing really good work. And so we're going to look at what Joe's doing. He's going to describe his process to how to actually rewire your brain. And then we're going to compare it with the science as compiled by Stanford neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman. And I did a 4-part series, and Dr. Huberman was basically doing a meta-analysis of what other neuroscientists have found out about neuroplasticity, the ability to rewire our brain. So this is going to be a good one today because we're really getting down to the nitty-gritty. And Dr. Huberman says that the research has been established, the university level. You know, Stanford is ranked number 1, 2, or 3 in the world in psychology, depending on the year and who's ranking them, and top 5 all in the world in neuroscience and psychiatry. So absolute world-class advice telling you can do this. And so we're going to go into the science of rewiring your brain, and we're going to see how Joe uses it. And Joe uses all 5 steps. He just kind of does it in this meandering way. So it'll be a good discussion today. This is Dr. Huberman says, yeah, hardly anyone's using these techniques. And these techniques should be used because they are so massively powerful. We just showed you last week, we did 2 sessions for a guy cured his stuttering. And if you want to see that, that's the second half of our show. Last week, we do play the video interview with a really up-and-coming, promising, great young man, Diego, and cured his stuttering, 2 sessions. So, going to be a good one today. Very interesting. But before we dive into that, Tim, welcome to the show and introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you, Ryan. I am still Tim Costello. Tim Costello Hypnosis. And what Ryan is talking about is when we say rewiring your brain, what we're talking about is installing new software after we have taken the old software out. And it's a very cool process, a very exciting process. And the reason it is immediate is because literally the old software is gone and the new software is installed. And many people, as they come out of hypnosis and come fully cognizantly aware again, something has certainly changed. The world looks a little differently. They act a little differently. They feel lighter. And this is no hokiness. This is scientific stuff going on in your head. And all we're simply doing is taking all of the resources that we have found in the world from Dr. Huberman and many others who have participated in this, and we are refining it and getting it down to a laser surgical incision approach. We get in there, we remove exactly what's bothering you, and we rewire it to a level that tells you how freaking awesome you are without anybody else telling you that. That's the key. You are worth full, worth a lot, and worth immense value. And you need to know that to your core. Your subconscious core beliefs is where we play. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And so we not only use these methods, which have been established by science. You're going to listen to the Stanford neuroscientist briefly, just briefly today. I mean, I have a 4-part series that goes deeper into the science. Go to the video section of this YouTube channel and watch Super Neuroplasticity parts 1, 2, 3, 4. There's case studies there. There's, we have on this channel, there's over 30 video interviews of people that we've done this for. In reality, we've done it for 700-800. So it'll be a very interesting discussion today. We're trying to get the message out. I mean, the science was done 25 years ago, 35 years ago, but the mainstream hasn't picked up on it. Even though world-class scientists say you can do it, and they're even noting, oh, hardly anyone is using this. Why? This is super powerful. Dr. Huberman says that. So I think first what we want to do, Tim, is just because these two initial clips are very brief. They're 10, 15 seconds. So let's play that so you guys see the science of rapidly rewiring your brain. And then we're going to compare it to what Joe does, and we'll have a discussion, watching Joe's interview. We're going to point out he mentions all the 5 steps of superneuroplasticity, but he does it in a very roundabout way. So we'll kind of analyze what he's doing and how. And by the way, his stuff is good. It's just it's not as concentrated or immediate as what we do. So let me go ahead and cue these videos up real quick. We've got these 2 brief ones. This is actually from my superneuroplasticity part 1 video on video section. And I believe, yeah. Okay, here's the first one. So here's Dr. Andrew Huberman. And
no, that's you.
There's me, and then there's Dr. Andrew Huberman. And he's going to say something, and after he says it, I'm going to get a little bit of context, but I think you guys understand more or less what he's saying here. So here we go.
When you stimulate these 3 brain regions, locus coeruleus, brainstem source of acetylcholine, and then the basal forebrain source of acetylcholine, when you have those 3 things, whatever you happen to be listening to, doing, or paying attention to, immediately in one trial takes over the representation of a particular area of the brain. You essentially get rapid, massive learning in one shot.
Boom. Okay. So we got to give you a little context, but I think you guys kind of get it. When certain conditions are present, then your brain releases certain neurotransmitters, and that puts your brain in a state where you can have massive change in one shot. Now, he's using the term learning. He's using the term massive learning in a very specific way. What he's saying is there is new information rewired into your brain immediately. That's what he means by learning. New information acquired, and he's actually talking about neurons rewiring. And we'll go later into a little more of the science very shortly. But he's saying, yeah, you do this. You rewire your brain in one shot. Now, if you watch the rest of his video, it's go to the Dr. Huberman channel. I'll edit the description and put it in. The video is from Dr. Huberman. The title of his video is Using Focus to Change Your Brain. And he's talking about instant brain rewiring. It's one of the very first podcasts he ever did. It's like number 6 or 7 that he ever did, because it's just so important. He got to it right away. And here are, if you watch, you can watch my 4-part series. I cover all the fundamentals in superneuroplasticity part 1. That's this video right here. These 5 steps to neuroplasticity, it's what Dr. Huberman explains over his 1.5-hour lecture. I'm just distilling it down. You can watch the original lecture. You'll see all of it's there. Here's the steps. Number 1, you become aware of what is in your brain that needs to change. Number 2, there needs to be alertness. So you cannot make this change listening to a hypnosis track while you sleep, because that component is missing. And if you go on Instagram or certain YouTube ads, they're like, I saw one recently, cure your alcoholism while you sleep, just listening to these hypnosis tracks while you sleep. That actually doesn't work. And Dr. Huberman talks about that in his lecture. He says, if you listen to stuff while you sleep, it can reinforce existing neural pathways for things that are already in your brain, but you do not rewire your brain listening to stuff while you're asleep. Just so you know. Correct. You need to be awake. And when you're awake, you have epinephrine in your brain at some degree. A cup of coffee increases epinephrine, but also, and again, it's all in his lecture. I'm not telling you anything he's not telling you. I'm just condensing down what he tells you into the most important parts here. When you feel intense emotionality, which our process is designed to trigger in you, then you get more epinephrine release, which makes your brain in a more neuroplastic state. But just being awake, you got some alertness because you're awake. Number 3, focus, acetylcholine. When you focus on something, releases a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. If you're focusing on the part of you that needs to change, step 1, you're awake, especially if you feel intense emotion, part 2. Then you focus on a belief in you, in your subconscious, that you want to change. Part 3, you then tell the brain to change. And you can literally say, this belief in me, you can say it out loud. This belief in me isn't true. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't belong in me. And here's the truth. That actually works. Now, there's other things to do to tell your brain to change that makes step 4 even more effective. There's visualizations, using symbolic imagery. There's some other techniques to use, but that's step 4. Step 5, deep sleep or rest. It's called non-sleep deep rest. In a state of meditation or hypnosis, you are in a state of non-sleep deep rest. You're awake, but you're very relaxed. So that satisfies number 5, or you just get a good night's sleep. And oftentimes the brain rewiring is finished when you get a good night's sleep. Sometimes it takes a day or two. Like I've had people, their brain, the change was so massive, the brain actually took a couple days to finish the rewiring. But once you go through these 5 steps, your brain will do the rest on its own to finish. It's actually rewiring neural pathways in your brain. Like, it's crazy, but that's what the science says, and that's what it does. Like fMRI machines show it.
Absolutely.
So those are the 5 steps. And that's what Dr. Huberman, what we just played, what he is saying when you follow these steps, and he had mentioned acetylcholine and epinephrine, and when you follow these steps, immediately, boom, massive brain rewiring. Watch the whole, you'll see brain rewiring is what he's talking about. Looks like we have some comments. Let's go to that. Now, Joe Dispenza talks about that, but it's just
so Ryan, let's
see how he does it.
Go ahead, Tim. Yeah, let me interrupt just a hair. So one of the things I want to talk about, why our methods are so precision and surgical. We have a process prior to hypnosis that we have the client work on prior. Mm-hmm. And then after they have refined some of that trauma feeling, we work with them for the first hour, hour and a half of our session to identify exactly what needs to change in their brain. In other words, we are isolating the subconscious trauma that causes them pain. That pain, by the way, we'll talk about what it does, but yeah, let's stay focused on the hypnosis part. So then we go into hypnosis. So what does that mean? That just means you're very, very relaxed. Your conscious state is put to the side, and your subconscious becomes a lot more aware. And that is what we're talking to. We're talking to your subconscious. So yeah, you're not asleep.
This is when you shift your focus to
right. We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah. So what we need to do is get you rested, right? And that rest is hypnosis. You are literally awake, fully aware, but you're not cognizant of what's going on around you because you're living with your subconscious.
You're focusing inward.
Right. Now, the alertness is that we are going to bring you in during hypnosis to be very aware of the pain or the anger or the resentment that is within you. And when we make that alertness very intense, right? You got some emotionality in there because we're dealing with the emotions. It gets very real and tremendously strong. Then we're focusing on that and that specifically, which releases the acetylcholine. And then we make the change. We literally tear out the old program, and then we tell the brain what it needs to learn now that is going to help you to the core.
You get out the bad and then you put in the new that's better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now,
and Dr. Huberman specifically says that getting rid of one thing and putting a new thing in, that's also part of the process. He says it in his lecture.
Absolutely. Now, the non-sleep deep rest first happens during hypnosis. And if you could see our clients become fully aware again and cognizant at the end of their hypnosis session, they literally moan, stretch, sigh like they have been asleep for 10 solid hours in the deepest sleep ever. It literally takes them 2 or 3 minutes to fully wake up, stretch out, get the body rolling again, and then they can sort of sit down and start experiencing it. But what's really important is we talk about what's going on, and then later on that day, they're going to go to sleep, and the brain is going to go back to work, and it's going to start reinforcing the things. It's not going to find the old software. And after a day or two, man, that thing is fully rewired, and you are moving. And it is a very exciting thing to participate in and see. Go ahead, Ryan.
We do it all day, every day, and we constantly see massive, powerful changes, life-changing changes in people, because we use in a concentrated form these 5 steps of neuroplasticity for instant massive learning, as Dr. Huberman puts it, in one shot. But then we work on the most important part of our subconscious belief systems that should be worked on, which is core identity beliefs. And psychology has known, the mainstream world of psychology, the guy who invented cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the mainstream so-called gold standard, even though it doesn't use neuroplasticity, really not at all, except through repetition. The guy who invented that is, I think, Alan T. Beck. And he also came up with the concept of core identity beliefs. This is back in the 1960s, 1970s. And it's now accepted by the mainstream. What we've done is we've taken this neuroscience that the psychological community has not adopted. They just flat out haven't adopted it, and shame on them. They should know better. So, and the issue is, you see neuroscience, you see certain types of biologists, you see psychiatry, you see psychology, and the amount of sharing knowledge between the different disciplines to get an overall most effective methodology, they're not doing it. They're not talking to each other and learning from each other. Or if they are, it's only to a limited degree and only in a way that's going to serve big pharma or these other massive industries that can turn this into a pill. But that's not what we're doing. I mean, literally, we have a free program that people can use on themselves and change their lives for free. Now, it's better to get one-on-one guidance from us so you actually see how it's done. But there are people fixing themselves for free right there. Join our free community, school.com/RyanFowlerSOS-7231. Try it for yourself. It trains you on how to do self-hypnosis, has a self-hypnosis audio, and shows you how to change your life. And people are doing that. So we're going to say welcome to the show to everyone in the comments. Brent Caldwell. Brent is actually a certified hypnotherapist. He's the guy I helped. You can watch his video interview on the YouTube channel. And Brent, we're going to go to an F1 championship in a few months. So looking forward to that. Gabriel has an interesting comment. Nicotine is a game changer. Nicotine is actually an aid to neuroplasticity. I don't know if you knew that, Tim.
Yep,
but
I heard about that.
It leads to epinephrine release, and I think possibly acetylcholine too, but it is actually an aid to neuroplasticity, so that's a very interesting comment. P-Dub, salute. That's Duarte, longtime listener. Thank you, New Next. Hi, New Next. Thanks for coming every week. And then Gabriel says Dr. Spock was a charlatan. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, he was a left-wing conversion. Yeah. He affected pretty much a whole generation of people that pretty much screwed everything up.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yep.
All right, so
we're here to fix it. What's up, Brent? Brent's in the house. Hey, Zaramina.
Zaramina, good afternoon.
You see that? Brent's in the house. We haven't seen Brent in a while. Good to see you, Brent.
Yeah. Brent, I'm going to an F1 championship with Brent in Mexico.
Nice.
In October. So
Talk into
we
the
got some
mic.
fun.
Can't hear you. What'd you say?
Going to an F1 championship with Brent in October. So looking forward to
that's
that one,
awesome.
man.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I some of my clients I've become friends with, It's just
Yep.
how it goes. So he's a former client. For client turned hypnotherapist. Although he doesn't practice as a hypnotherapist, he got certified because he knows how powerful this stuff is.
Yep.
Because he went through it and changed his life. Okay, so now we're gonna, with this background, we're gonna go and see what Dr. Dispenza is doing. And notice he actually mentions or does all these 5 steps. It's just he kind of has his own spin. He still helps people quite a bit. So let's cue this up and let's get into, maybe I should have done all that after, I'm not sure, but regardless, this will be good. All right, so we're picking up from last week where we left off with Diary of a CEO Mike Bartlett interview with Dr. Joe Dispenza, who has helped tens of thousands of people. I mean, he does help people. So here we go.
That you can change, because we have seen people with some really, really horrible pasts that literally are completely different people that have completely different lives.
By the way, I believe him because he is using the steps. It's just not as concentrated as what we do. He has helped a lot of people.
I really want to focus in on what it is we're getting wrong when we're trying to treat trauma in modern society, because I see all of these retreats that are like inner child healing, and they kind of take you back to when you were a young child, the thing that happened to you, whatever happened in your life, and they kind of walk you back through it. There's also various types of therapy that make you kind of recount the events and then they ask you questions about it. You're saying that you don't feel like those approaches are optimal because they just keep you in that circuit of reliving the emotion.
Well, I wouldn't say they're not optimal. I mean, I'm sure there's value for people. All I'm saying is that when does the story end? And I'm not certain that insight changes behavior. You could have a realization, even from an exogenous drug, you can have a realization or an insight. But if you still can't function in your life and you're still, you haven't connected with your wife, or, you're still dealing with trauma, it hasn't served you at all. Like, so the insight that your father was overbearing, or your mother was a perfectionist, or you were beaten as a kid, and that's why you're this way, it doesn't change the behavior.
Let me give you an example then from my life, because
And this is true. There are 5 steps to rewiring your brain. Awareness is only the first step. You got to have the other 4.
Yep.
All right, keep going.
to make it really specific. So when I was young,
That's the problem with all these other therapies is they may do 1 or 2 of the steps of rewiring your brain. They don't do all 5. So they're way less effective or completely ineffective as a result.
I've talked about it on the show, but it's just an example that allows me to think through your approach. My mum and dad argued a lot, and I would watch my mother in particular spend a lot of time shouting at my dad. My dad didn't really respond. He was very passive. And it made me feel a certain way as a young child, which meant that when I grew up, I just wanted to avoid women at all costs in terms of romantic commitment, because I was almost reliving the emotion of imprisonment that I observed in my father. So I felt like when a girl was interested in me throughout all of my teen years, throughout my early 20s, even if I was interested in her, the minute we came to commitment, I'd get that feeling like I was signing up for prison, and I would reject. Now, I got an insight into this by writing in my diary, actually from doing this podcast, because I used to do it on my own, just solo episodes. And I could see a pattern. I could see that someone asks me to commit, I get this weird feeling, I reject them. And then I asked myself, where did that weird feeling come from in your past? And I remembered, oh, that's how I felt watching my father and my mum when she would just scream at him for long periods of time. I had the insight, which was somewhat useful, but you're right in that it didn't necessarily stop the feeling.
But what you did really well is in order for us to change, we have to become so conscious of those unconscious beliefs. And what's a belief? A thought you just keep thinking over and over again, or how you've been programmed, right? It's a belief. We have to become so aware of our automatic habits and behaviors. And we have to pay attention to our emotional states if we're going to change. And staying conscious of our unconscious self is really the work that it takes to really overcome, so you can become another person.
Joe is 100% correct here. You do need the awareness. It's just you need the other 4 steps as well. And anything to add, Tim?
You know, they gloss over a little bit. And he even said how you were programmed. And the question is, Stephen relayed an incident where his mother would scream and yell at his dad, and his dad really wouldn't respond much. His young brain is learning that, one, women are dangerous to men, and men are not allowed to talk back. That's probably what he's reading from that interaction.
Form that
is a
belief.
misfiring of a brain. And a young child like that, because these people are supposed to be wonderful and fantastic and put on a pedestal, he thinks that's correct behavior, and now he is the defective one. And he starts believing to his core that he's not good enough, or he's made defectively, or something
Or
like that.
women are dangerous.
So that's what Joe Dispenza is talking about that programming. It's your subconscious observing what's going on and trying to figure out what's going on to protect you. And it doesn't really have enough information to understand adult interaction.
Yeah. And so what we teach is, when we're children, we're born in this world, we have a little instinct, don't know anything else. We observe things that happen around us, and we form beliefs about what everything means. We draw conclusions, interpret it, and form beliefs. And these beliefs get tied to feelings. And then as an adult, where there's something in the outside world that's a match for the belief formed in childhood, the feeling gets triggered. That's exactly what he's describing. So when you feel emotions, your emotions are coming from your subconscious beliefs learned in childhood and adolescence. Now, question by Gabriel E. Thoughts on
Ibogaine.
Ibogaine.
It's a psychedelic.
Yeah, I know there's Ibangi ceremonies. I don't know if that's Ibogaine, but psychedelics, most psychedelics cause it puts you in a neuroplastic state and also connect you to your subconscious, but it depends on the psychedelic. So MDMA, for example, ecstasy, which is very, very, very promising for curing trauma. MDMA releases dopamine and serotonin simultaneously. And then what happens is, if you go to a trauma, you're feeling these, what MDMA will do, for example, is if you then shift inward, and a lot of people don't know how to use MDMA to clear trauma, but if you do it right, you shift inwards, and your brain literally gives you a new emotion about that trauma, because you have simultaneous dopamine and serotonin release. So if you do that guided, now psilocybin has been shown in clinical trials to fix severe depression in 65% of people who didn't respond to normal treatment. Normal treatment only works 40 to 50% of the time anyways. CBT 50% of the time. Means half the time the best mainstream treatment that normal psychologists have only works half the time. Half the people who come in, it doesn't do anything for. I mean, it's
by the way, it's moderately successful for 40 to 50% of the people. It's not 100% successful.
Yeah. So and then normal medication, the SSRIs, work 40% of the time. That's it. Well, psilocybin for severe depression, people who are not responsive to other treatment, 2 psilocybin trips cures depression or dramatically improves their depression 2/3 of the time, 65%. So psychedelics can be very, very helpful. They do facilitate neuroplasticity. It's best if you do it when it's guided and while you're under the influence. Ketamine, again, can be helpful. Other types can be helpful, but it's best, be supervised, use medical professionals, and be guided while you're under the influence of psychedelics to actually rewire your brain. What ayahuasca does is, it's kind of like if our mind is like an iceberg. Our conscious mind is the iceberg you see above water, and then 95% of the iceberg is actually below water. Ayahuasca lowers the water line, so a lot of what's in your subconscious you are now consciously aware of. And there's some other stuff that goes on. I'm really just broadly summarizing this, but that can be helpful. But with that said, I've had people come to me who've done like hundreds of trips and they still got trauma because they did not go in and intentionally rewire. They got in this neuroplastic state, but they didn't do step number 1 and 4. You know, they might become more aware of their trauma because that water line's getting lowered, but they don't intentionally make the change. They didn't know how. They didn't know the steps.
Right.
So psychedelics can become an aid to rewiring the brain, but at the same time, what's the guy from Friends?
Matt
Perry.
Yeah, Matthew Perry.
Matthew Perry died of a ketamine overdose. Ketamine is addictive. I've known 2 people who messed up their brains for over a year. One of them's a hypnotist. I won't say his name. Messed up, you know, and they screwed themselves up with too much psychedelics. So you can have a bad trip. You can screw up your brain with psychedelics. Overall, for most people, it's not an issue, but it can be. So there are downsides to psychedelics, and you got to be careful. But at the same time, when used correctly, and some of them, like MDMA, has almost no side effects and is very close. I don't know if it's 100% safe, but it's generally considered pretty safe. So, but MDMA is still illegal. They're actually trying to get it legalized so that they can use it therapeutically because it has big therapeutic benefits. And that's MDMA is ecstasy. Gabriel asks,
he says, just asking. He'd prefer our method.
Well, and that's the thing is if you go on an ayahuasca trip or some of these other trips, many of them, it depends. MDMA, I think people enjoy that. That's why they take it. Same thing with ketamine. People use ketamine recreationally, but some of these other ones, such as ayahuasca, psilocybin, and I believe I've heard this about ibogaine too. The trips can be bad. They can.
Yeah, they've actually used it on a lot of military veterans to help them with traumatic brain injuries.
Yeah, and it's their trips can last like 8 hours, 10 hours. You know, they can last a long time. And I've had people tell me, I do a session for 2 hours, and they say, well, that was like a less intense version of a psychedelic, but noticeably more beneficial.
Ours doesn't hurt.
And there's no side effects. You know, you may maybe 10-20% of people feel bad for a day after if they cleared a lot of trauma, and then they feel amazing and they're permanently better. So that's about the only side effect I can think of. Okay, so back to
Mr. Joe.
Back to Mr. Joe. Here we go.
That's 95% of a person by the middle of their life. Really the work that it takes to really overcome so you can become another person. That's 95% of a person by the middle of their life. They're, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions, automatic habits and behaviors, and unconscious emotional responses. 95% of us is programmed. So as a child, your brain waves are very slow. The door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is wide open. Your brain waves are in alpha and theta, and so you're very suggestible to the information. And so your exposure to that caused you to learn that your observation caused you to get programmed to that's the way life is by mirror neurons looking at behaviors that are being programmed in you. So, but that's not who you are, right? So the fact that you became conscious, like, oh my God, I do this. Oh my God, I see where I got it from. Okay, that doesn't mean that I'm going to excuse myself and say I can't be in relationships. You could. Some people do that. Might be a different belief, but they do that. But you said, I really want to have a meaningful relationship. I really want to overcome this. This is part of me that I want to change, right? So you recognize that. That's called metacognition, right? The fact that you can objectify your subjective self and observe yourself, that's consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're conscious, then that's when you're not unconscious. Mm-hmm. And being unconscious is being in the program. So how many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering? That's the moment of change. So you said, okay, that's uncomfortable. That must mean something. And you actually went on a personal exploration.
Yeah.
Do something with the insight. with the provocation, with the interest of actually wanting to change yourself in some way so that you create a greater experience of life, that there is love in life, and that you
Let's
can
stop
have
right there for a
commitment.
second.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we don't pick up all the time is everything they're saying. So he's talking about feeling that pain. There's some emotional pain that you're feeling. Take note of it, make use of it, that kind of stuff. Part of our process, which is called Dive to the Five, the beginning of that has what's called a descriptive word list. And these are my instructions to my clients as they begin the process.
Yeah.
One, you sit down with a descriptive word list. And the descriptive word list is broken down into 5 different categories because there are 5 types of subconscious trauma. 1 is I'm not good enough. 2 is I don't belong or can't fit in. 3, I can't get what I want, or when I get it, I don't deserve it. 4, I'm unsafe or unsecure. And number 5, I'm really mad, angry, or resentful at something or someone, and that is very deep and I can't let it go. So those are the 5 categories. And what we do is we give them a bunch of words, and I say, look, take category 1, read 1 word, wait a few seconds, and see if that feels like anything. See if it triggers you. And they can even use that word in a sentence. Like the word might be worthless. And you could say, I feel worthless. And you just wait. If there's no feeling, go on to the next word. And there's probably about 20 words per category roughly. And you just use them and play with them. And you circle the words on the piece of paper that trigger you. Don't do anything with them now. Just figure out how to trigger and go to the second category. And some don't even do it all in one day. Some will do 1 category today, second category tomorrow, and sort of go that direction.
Yeah.
They are going to note those things. And then I tell them, go back to those at some point and refine those. I feel worthless because.
Yeah.
I feel worthless. Why do you feel worthless? Why? Because why is that? You just keep digging until you get really refined. And you're writing these things on the steps in the Dive to the 5 form, which is easily typable. It's a PDF format you can type in.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we begin our session, the first thing we do is say hello and stuff like that. But we dive into that, no pun intended, that Dive to the 5 form. And we literally
You're diving into your subconscious.
Yeah, we're literally helping them understand that emotion and get it to it's really triggered. If I can trigger somebody to 6, 7 outside of hypnosis, I can easily ramp that up to a 10 during hypnosis, making alertness like through the roof, right? The epinephrine is really flowing, and it really helps support what we're trying to do to identify that trauma that we're going to remove. Now, usually you'll do 2 or 3 of those statements and we'll get rid of the rage, resentment, anger first. But that's what we do. That's how you become aware of what needs to change. So when Dr. Joe says, you have a response to something, take note.
Yeah.
And write it down and sort of try to figure it out. Well, we did a lot of that for you and we help you through that process. That's the cool part, because when you become aware of what needs to change and you become very alert to that during hypnosis, the things you need to flow to change the brain are happening because you're alert to it and you're focusing directly on that particular thing. And in that number 4, when you're telling the brain to change, we're essentially telling you this does not belong in you, right? This is not really part of you. This is just a learning that you learned along the way using Dr. Huberman's word. And when we tear that out and strip it out, then we tell the brain exactly what it needs to know, how freaking awesome you are, and so on and so forth. So that's how we rewire the brain. So when he just brushes over, take note of something, we have a tremendous, intense surgical process to help that process along. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, we are very, thank you, Tim. Very good info. We'll get back to Joe. While you're listening to Joe, remember these 5 steps. Now, kudos to Joe, because he's actually, the only step I don't hear him talk about is focus. But he talks about, making a change. he uses meditation, which is non-sleep deep rest. And we do hypnosis meditation. You're in the same state. When you're meditating, you're in the same state as hypnosis. It's the same brain state. He talks about insight awareness. He talks about emotionality, which is tied to epinephrine and alertness. He talks about telling the brain to change. He's using meditation number 5. The only thing he doesn't really talk about is focus. And what he does now, what these less effective methods do is, if they're not following all 5 steps, is they use repetition. And so it's kind of like Joe is almost there. He's if he just understood the underlying 5 fundamental things that must be there, which he almost does, and if he just distilled it down and concentrated it into a process, he would notice that now he is rewiring people's brains. But as you listen to him talking about overtime and, with enough repetition, that right there tells you he's not doing it as good as he can, because we showed Dr. Andrew Huberman one shot massive rewiring, one shot. When you put all these steps together, it's not, I got to listen to this meditation 30 times. It's, I listened to it once, boom, different. And that's what we do. So
now let me add to that, Ryan, that if you do our process of the dive to the 5 and these steps to neuroplasticity and fully engaged, everything Dr. Joe is giving you will be 10,000 times more effective.
Well, maybe not 10,000, but
Oh, come on now, give it to him, right? You're going to pay 10 grand anyway. You know what I'm saying? It's tremendously much more effective when you don't have that underlying trauma that you're not really focused on getting rid of.
Yeah. Joe does help people with very, very severe trauma. And I know a lady who's used a ton of his stuff, and it can be very, very, very effective. It just takes longer.
Yep, absolutely.
And he's almost there, just not quite. You get all the steps nailed. Guys, what are your thoughts on using breath work? Very good question. Yep. I use breath work.
Absolutely.
Calming your mind during self-hypnosis. So here, Dr. Huberman actually talks about the science of breath work. So what happens with breath work? Oh, hold on. I'm trying to get it so we can see your face again, Tim. All right.
Oh, that's okay.
What happens with breath work is you can do what's called a double breath. So you take a deep breath as much as you can, and then you do a short second breath to get even more air in. So Dr. Huberman says you go like this. You see that second breath at the top to get just a little. So what happens is when your diaphragm fills up, it compresses your heart because your heart's right next to your diaphragm. But then as you slowly breathe out, the trick is to slowly breathe out after that deep breath. It then relaxes the heart, and the heart expands, and you're actually creating extra space so your heart can fully expand out. And what happens with that is as your heart fully expands out, it is now able to pump more blood with fewer pumps, and your heart rate literally slows down as a result. And so breath work is a way to, and that affects your entire body, including your brain. Everything slows down with breath work. And that starts you on the path towards hypnosis, which is slowing down this cognitive buzzing thoughts racing through your brain.
Yep.
Slows everything down. And then with actual hypnosis, you're going to shift your focus inward. So when you, one thing we say is, okay, what do you feel? Where do you feel it in your body? And meditation is just, hey, observe your thoughts. Well, it's focusing your attention inward. Same thing. So to get that process started, slow everything down with breath work. As you're breathing out, you slowly breathe out as much as you can, all the way. Heart expands, heart rate slows down, and so does the rest of your body. So that's what breath work does. And I do breath work all the time to put people into a light hypnotic state all the time. but it won't take you super deep by itself, but it gets started. Acetylcholine stored at the end of the nerve cells until it's triggered to be released. Once released from the end of the nerve cell, it moves into a space called the synaptic cleft. Okay,
That's that spot in between the synapse and the nerve.
Well, and there's actually two parts of the brain. I can't remember that. There's this basal part here where it releases acetylcholine, and then there's called like
he mentioned it in his description.
Yeah, it's something minor. There's two spots your brain releases acetylcholine as well, two centers from which it's released. And you actually need to release acetylcholine from both of these parts of your brain to get in this neuroplastic state. Well, what releases it? Focusing on something releases it. Whenever you focus on something, that releases acetylcholine. So, or actually, when you want to focus, your brain releases acetylcholine so that you can then focus. And again, this happens very quickly. You know, doesn't take a minute for the acetylcholine to kick in. It takes a fraction of a second. So, okay, moving on. Oh, back to Joe. Joe has a lot of good stuff. He is
absolutely.
He just needs to concentrate what he's doing and distill it down. So listen to him talking about these 5 steps. He's mentioned insight. He's mentioned making the change. He's mentioned emotionality, which is tied to epinephrine and alertness. Hasn't talked about focus. He talks about meditation, non-sleep, deep rest. So he's almost there.
Relationship, and it can be different from your parents. And now you know what you're not going to be, right? So I think all of that is valuable. I think every experience that we have in our life that programs us to be a certain way, sooner or later, if we're interested in arriving at the goals and dreams that we want, we have to leave that behind. But sooner or later, a part of us must not. Sooner or later, we have to leave that. So I think
this is a problem with victims. They have to stay in their victimhood to get people to feel sorry for them. They just trigger their trauma and then they wallow in it. And sucks to be them when you choose to live that type of life. Don't be a professional victim, man.
But the reason they do that, Ryan, and you probably just didn't mention this, is
move beyond it.
Yeah, they need external validation to provide them some value of sense of being. Yeah. So they need to trigger, they need to wallow, they need to let other people around them know that they're hurting, so everybody can patty cake them and tell them how wonderful they are, and it's not too bad. And that is a sense of external validation, by the way, which there never is ever enough.
Yeah.
You can never get enough external validation to overwhelm what you need on the inside, which is your internal validation.
So many people get to this point and wallow in it instead of clearing it out, moving forward. They wallow in their victimhood. Maybe some of them don't know any better.
Yeah,
but it's a horrible, tortured way to live. I'm going to wallow in my victimhood. People feel sorry for me. Now I feel validated. But guess what? You have to stay in that victimhood and you never move on and claim your power. Sucks.
So what I would add to that is
that sucks.
The people that do that,
a lot of people do
the people who do that are damaged individuals, and they were never taught as a 0 through 8-year-old how to think about themselves and receive their own internal validation, not needing somebody else. So they're actually victims, true victims.
Yeah.
And they continue on through life, and they don't know that they're supposed to have internal validation. They just continue operating the way they operate because that's where they get it. They can't help themselves. So not that they don't know, they just don't know any better. They know it works for them.
Yeah. But now they're stuck.
It doesn't help them, but it works for them.
Constant naggers, constant complainers, constantly poking on the negative. They're in the exact same boat.
Absolutely.
All right, moving forward.
I think that's evolution.
The first step insight. Like, is this a sequential multi-step process to change?
I think I think insight is an aspect of awareness.
So is awareness stage?
Yeah. So consciousness is awareness, and awareness is paying attention and noticing. So I think the first step is to become conscious that we're a certain way. And sometimes it lands as an insight or a download or a life experience that just kind of goes, you go, whoa, like, so I behaved this way, or I did this thing. So I think when you don't have that, you don't have a conscience, and you can just keep staying in that world. But sooner or later, you have to become aware.
How do I increase my awareness?
By paying attention.
Is there a practice or a system or a process?
And that is true. That is true, but that is a less effective method because that is a passive way. You're just being observant when things come up. We actually dive down and actively find it. He's like, just be passively aware.
Yeah, this is one of the things that drives me nuts about the awareness world, right? They give you this very vague, generic statement. You just need to be aware. And now
that's what meditation does.
Hang on. Stephen immediately goes to, so what's that process of being aware? How do I actually do that? What do I do when I'm doing that? How do I feel when I'm doing that? So Stephen really wants to know what generically and generally Dr. Dispenza is talking about, right? Just be aware. Be aware of what? When? How?
And that's what meditation does. You get into this state. Now observe your thoughts, whatever decides to come up, whatever randomly happens.
Right.
It's so much slower. It's good. But we give you a list of words. Here's 5 types of trauma. Here's a bunch of different words. Which ones resonate with you? And we're taking you through an active, okay, this word, not good enough, inadequate, angry, disappointed. These, okay, put them in the worksheet, write them down. I'm angry at blank because. I'm inadequate because. And we have a process for you to now actively explore. You first look at the word list. Boom. This one's a match. This one. So we have an active process, and it goes way quicker. I mean, it's like 100 times quicker because you don't just wait for whatever decides to come up and then just take note of it when it comes up. Can that work? Yeah, it absolutely can work, but it's so much slower, man. Come on, man.
So
you want to fix it now, or do you want to fix it over the next year when you get triggered randomly by something,
Right. Let's also talk about how painful this is for someone who was raised with a lot of ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences, which is now causing them tremendous trauma as an adult that prevents them from functioning and achieving and, quite frankly, having a wonderful life.
Yeah.
So as you dive into this, one of the biggest questions people are reluctant to is, I'm so embarrassed that this happened. Well, number one, it's not your fault, right? You're just wired that way. And you're not any different. I tell people all the time, you're very special, but you are not unique. There are millions and millions going through exactly what you're going through. So
very
Ryan
similar.
Ryan and I deal with so many clients. We don't have time or brain capacity to remember everything about you. In fact, once we help you clear it out, we forget it as well.
Yeah.
So
I take notes, but
but don't be. I mean, you'll have the memory. You just won't have the emotional link that was traumatizing you, which is key. We don't get rid of memories.
The memory lost its power.
Right. But what I'm saying is that it's painful to do this process. And that's why some people are hesitant to do it and procrastinate, because it's painful. When they start using those words, I am worthless or I am inadequate.
That's painful.
And you believe that to your core because that's what was programmed. It's not true, but it still affects you. And
it hurts if it's in
absolutely. It's hard to get through that. So if you ever need help doing that, we're here for you. Right. But you have to do it. You have to get through it, because at the other side of this, after 5 or 6 hours with Ryan and I, boom, you're literally a whole new person that Joe Dispenza is talking about. But it happens in 5 or 6 hours, not a year.
Yeah. And, our session's 5 or 6 hours. You may have a few minutes you're feeling the painful emotion. it's not like it's nothing you haven't felt before. You've absolutely felt before many times. We're getting you to focus on it one last time so we can get out of you forever.
One of
So
Ryan's.
if you put it off, you're just going to keep suffering and getting triggered randomly by other stuff instead of choosing to connect to it, hopefully, probably for the last time.
And one of my favorite statements that Ryan has ever said in all the things that he has taught me or I have heard him say and stuff was that he felt that he was afraid to look inside.
Yeah.
Because he might actually realize he is worthless. And then he would just simply confirm that truth.
What if I go inside and find out what is buried deep down there that I'm no good piece of shit is true?
Right.
What if I find that out?
And what he did find out was that wasn't true. Now, that feeling or that core belief may have been there, right? Because it was programmed in. But what he found out was that it wasn't true.
It's a false core belief.
Absolutely. A false core belief. And by the way, a false core belief is just as strong as a true core belief, but you got to get in there and remove it and rewire it. But I've always loved that in Ryan's whole story. The biggest thing that sticks out in my mind is, guess what? I was afraid to look inward because it might have been true. Well, let me tell you, it's not true. And we actually help you change that core belief.
That's right. Never true. Thank you, Tim.
You bet.
Okay, we'll play a little bit more of this. There's still some good stuff here. Just remember the 5 steps and see which ones Joe uses. That I think he uses them all except he doesn't mention focus. That's the only missing ingredient he has.
Yeah. What we know is that the more you practice being present, the better you get at it.
Okay.
And so how do you do that? If you sit in a meditation, right? And so there's a mode in the brain called default mode, and it's just always busy. It's consuming enormous amounts of energy in the brain, and it's always trying to predict the future based on what it knows in the past. It's a kind of an anticipation machine. It's always trying to fill in a known in reality so we feel safe. So a default mode system in the brain, when you close your eyes in a meditation, is going to immediately go into overdrive. It's going to say, oh, my back hurts a little bit. I'm kind of thirsty. How long is this going to go? I really don't want to do this. I don't like the music. It might be too long. Oh, I'm starting to get a little frustrated. I want to lay down. All of this stuff comes up. And then people have the belief and they say, I can't meditate. That's their conclusion from the experience. I'm not a good meditator. That's their affirmation. That's their belief, right? From that experience. But if you say to a person, listen, that's normal. But every time you catch yourself going unconscious and become conscious, that's a victory. And as tedious as it may be in the beginning, the more you catch yourself going unconscious and becoming conscious, the more conscious you become in your life. And all of a sudden, you begin to pay attention to things that you weren't paying attention to before. So in the work that we do, we say that being in the present moment, truly in the present moment, is being comfortable in the unknown, right? The present moment is the unknown because there is the familiar past that we feel emotionally, and we have the predictable future, which are both the knowns. Being in the present moment is being in the unknown, and that goes against thousands of years of programming because our biology is programmed that if we are truly in the unknown, we should be in survival. Because if you're in survival and you're in the fight or flight system, the unknown is a threat. It's a danger. So always try to predict the future based on the past, and you'll have better chances of survival. Predict the worst case scenario. Be ready for that. Anything less that happens, you have better chance of surviving. So then to rest in the unknown goes against a lot of our biology. And we discovered that when a person keeps doing it over and over again, the body gets agitated, it gets frustrated, it gets impatient. Instead of the person saying, I quit, give them something to do, and they can lower the volume to the emotion and settle the animal down, like training an animal. settling the body back down into the present moment. We teach people how to do that, and that's the victory.
Giving them something to do.
So it's true. The more you do something, the better you get at it. That's true with our methods. That's true with what Joe's teaching. But again, he's talking about training yourself just to be present and wait to see what comes up from your subconscious and then notice it. That is a passive process. If he switched to an active process of actively going in and finding what's down there, it would accelerate his the results of what he does like immediately.
Yeah, they have it. They have something to do when that comes up. Okay,
Which is
I'll get to it in a second. And if they catch their mind going from a person to another object, to their cell phone, to their computer, to a place they need to be, and at a time, and they catch themselves with their brain firing in modulated compartments. If they keep catching themselves doing that, if they keep doing that and they catch the circuit when it's firing and they settle it down, in time, sooner or later, they're going to stop firing those circuits in the brain. And
Tim, do you see how he's telling people to train their brain to not focus?
Yes.
And because what he's saying is your brain keeps trying to focus on different things. And he's like, we're training you to not focus, and then whatever comes up from within your subconscious, observe that. And that's his method of becoming aware of what's in your subconscious. We actually use focus, and you've seen this step number 4 of superneuroplasticity is focus. That is a component of actually rewiring your brain. So we use focus to actively go in, and that's just another reason what we do is more effective and it accelerates what Joe's doing.
One of the things he doesn't mention through all of those distractions is why you're being distracted. And you usually participate in those things overwhelmingly because you're trying to calm the subconscious pain, right?
Yeah.
You're distracted. You sit and doom scroll on your phone all day long through Facebook or Instagram or what's the other one? TikToks or whatever. Or you go play video games for 45 hours a week, or, all those activities are fun to do for a few minutes, but you got to stop doing those if you want to start focusing on the pain. And that's what he's talking about there.
Well, I think it's good to train your brain to not focus. I think that
agree.
has its uses.
Yep.
But when it comes to actually finding and removing trauma, learning not to focus actually doesn't help. Because it's easier to actively find. It's I would say cognitively easier, and it takes less skill, less practice, because our brain is used to focusing on stuff. It takes less skill to go inward in an active process and then actively focus on the trauma that's in you. That's actually a lot easier to do and takes a lot less skill to build that than training your brain to do something that it's not used to doing.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
And it's actually a better process. It works way quicker.
Yep.
The number one thing that I've seen, so like a normal hypnotist, we use some techniques normal hypnotists don't. Although hypnosis is a huge aspect of what we do. Hypnosis is like saying I paint with oils. It's just a medium. You see stage hypnotists painting with oils and painting crazy pictures. They're doing it for entertainment. But we have, we're very serious focused to what we're doing. We're not doing anywhere near what the stage hypnotists are doing, but we're painting in the same medium. That's it,
Yep.
But with that said, these your normal conventional hypnotist does use neuroplasticity. The biggest shortcoming of a conventional hypnotherapist is they're not trained on how to go inward and find the trauma. What I've taken the pro training, you've taken the pro training, and it's kind of like, well, you just kind of know what you're struggling with and just ask your subconscious to focus on it. And they have a pretty not a very good process for actually really zeroing in on what that trauma is. Would you know what I mean? Would you agree?
Well, so when you go to hypnology school, I'll call it that.
Hypnotist school, yeah.
I used a funny word, hypnology, but
sure.
they teach you a number of flavors of watercolor. You can do inner child. You can do past life regression.
All helpful.
You can do Gestalt.
Yeah.
You can do regression to cause. There's all these different things they teach you how to do, but during the hypnosis school, they don't, or the classes, they don't teach you how to use them all very effectively. They just give them to you.
Yeah, they have a method for helping like find what's in you that needs fixing. It's called parts therapy.
Yep.
And it sucks. It is.
Yes, it does. I hated it. I thought it was psychobabble garbage.
And that's where hypnotism and conventional hypnosis falls short. Hypnosis has all the tools. They're not really good at the awareness aspect. And that's
Correct.
why we have the dive to the 5 process. It's the best process on the planet for awareness. I'll say that right now. And you see all these guys, listen, Joe Dispenza, his methods by and large are way better than conventional psychotherapy. Way better.
Yep.
Way better. And I salute him. He's a pioneer. You know, we came along after him and have something even better. That's how it goes. It's all good. You know, it's not crapping on him. He's in his time a pioneer. Absolutely. Rediscover his or her own humanity. Let's see this comment here. The beautiful tale demonstrates the delicate art of balancing your spiritual and material needs. Show how this goal can be maddeningly elusive and glorious. Yeah, I totally get that, man. Gabriel, butcher versus surgeon. I do think Joe is great, man. He just needs to tweak a few things, and then he'd be 10 times. 9D. I have not heard of that. I will Google that after.
It's breath work. It's breath work with 9D music.
Okay, cool. All right. The new next. So new next, tell us what you thought about parts therapy. I've been trained in parts therapy. Very early on, I used it, and it's just not as helpful for finding bad subconscious. It's way too broad and blunt of a tool.
Correct.
You need a scalpel, and it's giving you like a butter knife,
a rusty meat cleaver.
Yeah, it's just too low resolution. You don't get the resolution and detail you need to be effective with parts therapy. Zoramina, try the free program right now. And you can start, you can see what we do right now. It's free. It's the banner's coming around, where it comes to school.com/RyanFowlerSOS I think -7231, I think.
Yep.
And do it now. Do it now. There's a free program. You're ready now. Maybe you don't have enough money for a session. Maybe you need to save up for that. Do the free stuff now. You'll see our process.
You will have some gain guaranteed.
Yeah. So he did not get much out of parts therapy. Yeah, I agree. It's not that great. It's too bad. You are very welcome, Zoran. Try it, and then next week come on the show and put in the comments, or shoot me an email, Ryan@intermasculine.com, or Ryan@info@RyanFowlerSOS.com, Ryan@RyanFowlerSOS.com, or email Tim. Let us know how it went. You can DM me on the school platform too. I'd love to hear how it was for you. And hey, if you get stuck and you have a question, DM me the question. I'll answer it.
That's
I'll
it.
charge for that. So let's listen to just a little bit more of Joe, and then we'll wrap it up. I know we're over time, Tim. And Tim always has stuff to do. So we'll listen to just a little bit more. But man, if Dr. Joe just got better with the awareness, swapped out a passive process for an active one, and then use the focus mechanism a little bit better, his program would work 10 times faster. I'm not kidding. It's a good program. It's just
their brainwaves begin to change from an agitated, aroused state into a more coherent and slower brainwave state. So when they do this enough times, the brain begins to synchronize. The brain begins to fire in greater levels of wholeness or greater levels of order. So when that occurs, then the nervous system gets very regulated, gets very orderly. The autonomic nervous system moves into a state of regulation. Dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system is called stress, right? So to answer your question, when people do this really well, in just a few days, they'll get really good at it. The side effect of that is they get very relaxed in their heart. It's relaxed in the heart. and it's awake in the brain. And the more relaxed you get in your heart,
Hey, Ryan,
you
I don't see
discover
him on screen.
really relaxing.
Oh, I'm not sharing it. Sorry.
I heard it though.
Okay, here we go. Boom, baby. Oh, all right.
Your heart, the more the heart informs the brain to get creative. And so now the person has this kind of synchronization that's taking place between their heart and their brain as well. And they can rest in the present moment. So
What he's talking about does have its own unique benefit as a stress management tool. We're just more focused on instant change of programs that don't serve you, getting rid of them as powerfully and quickly as possible, and putting the best programs in to replace it as quickly as possible, as deeply as possible. Our method's better for that, but what he's talking about here has its own benefit when it comes to staying present and stress management. It has its own unique benefits. So you're not wasting your time by learning this. It just is not as effective when it comes to rewiring your brain.
So the way you do that is you define what it really means to change. And to change is to be greater than the conditions in your environment, to be able to think, act, and feel differently in your same environment. That's what change is. To change is to be greater than your body, to be greater than its drives in the meditation. I'm speaking specifically, greater than its emotional responses, its memories, its emotional reactions, greater than its habits. The habit is when you've done something so many times, the body knows how to do it better than the conscious mind. That's so if you're sitting in a meditation, your body wants to get up and wants to get going. You got people to see, things to do. That's kind of like automatic, right? And people get up and they say, I can't meditate. But if you tell them that when you notice that, you bring your body back into the present moment, you settle it down and tell it it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind. You're training the animal. Sooner or later, the body literally responds to a new mind. And there's literally a liberation of energy. The body begins to liberate energy. And if the person's not thinking about time, if you're not thinking about where you need to be, where you need to go, where you were yesterday, where you're sitting, where you live, if you're not thinking about any place, you can go from somewhere to nowhere. And if you're not thinking about the predictable future or the familiar past, you can go from some time to no time. And we discovered when a person becomes nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time, they literally become pure consciousness. And opening our awareness, I know this is kind of difficult to explain because we're materialists, opening our awareness to nothing and sensing space tends to cause us to move more into the eternal present moment. And there's a change that takes place in the brain. So we teach that.
And what awareness comes out of that state? So if I'm looking to change my life, because
probably a good place to stop. I wish we could listen to a little more, but we're out of time.
Yep.
Do you have any final thoughts or comments, Tim? And then I'll go.
So I think Dr. Joe is very good at speaking in all these broad generalities, but I love a more concrete surgical approach.
Yeah.
Right. I appreciate the, visioning in the eternal moment. The hell does that mean? I have no idea.
And what does pure consciousness mean?
Yeah, I don't know what that is either. So there's a little bit of psychobabble wrapped around some really good information, right? So what I want is a mechanic's manual to tell me how to go in there and change the things I need to change so that you can be better. Literally in 6 hours, 5-6 hours with Ryan and or Jordan, you are a different person coming out. The same name, but you're different.
There's Jordan, by the way. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Jordan.
Okay, my man.
Nice.
We forgot where he was. All right.
Hey, Jordan, did you go to ABC stores and get some, what do you call those? High chews? They're called Lily Koi High Chews. Best high chews on earth.
Cool. You're welcome, Gabriel. You're welcome, the new next. Now, here's the thing. We're not trashing Joe at all because honestly, his techniques combine some stress management tools that we don't use. We are just hyper focused on finding subconscious beliefs that are causing you to struggle, causing you all sorts of pain and difficulty in life, and getting them out, replacing them with the best beliefs. That's what we do. Joe has a method that combines, calming down your brain and just stress management, which even when you're not in a meditative state, you go out through the day, you're handling stress better. That's what his methods do. Now, he has most of the aspects of super neuroplasticity there as well. He has a passive instead of an active awareness process. When you do his methods enough, you can resolve the same trauma we're resolving, but because his method isn't concentrated on the necessary steps, it's combining, some of it's a little less effective, but still works. It just takes longer. Some of it is more of a better used as a stress management tool than a brain rewiring tool, but he still is getting most. And honestly, focus tends to come on its own as well when you're like intentionally feeling into certain emotions that come up. So he's almost there,
Yep.
And man,
Just about there.
When you get it all the way there, the sum is greater than the whole of the parts. And he would literally get the results 10 times quicker if he just tweaked a few things. But the stress management aspects of what he's doing, just being there and getting to the state of pure consciousness, that is just an awesome stress management tool. So I don't want to crap on that and say you shouldn't do that. It's just not the right tool to be optimal for the big, massive core identity change. It changes your entire life, changes everything. I know from experience because I did it. We did it for Tim's wife. Jordan did it for himself. So thank you for the kind words, people. I'll put this up, Zoromina, but that is going to be our show. Zoromina, have a great day. Jordan Kurtz, and he's in Hawaii, and Gabriel. Thanks,
Gabe.
much. So it's our mission to bring this to the world because it's so massively useful. I would never discourage you from trying Joe's stuff. He is the real deal. I just wish he had maybe just a little bit better understanding of these exact fundamentals. That honestly, the scientific research has been done, but it's just not propagating out into the practical mainstream community at all for whatever reason. So no one else will do it. Well, damn it, we will.
That's it.
And you can do it too. Use this as a guide or try the free stuff. Most people who try the free stuff benefit from it. And then they come to us for like just really specific customized instruction to get like the real rapid change, although that can happen with a free program. It absolutely has. So I would never discourage anyone from using his methods. I would say please use ours because no one has a perfect subconscious. Even people who've been raised in an overall healthy environment, which is, 10-20% of people who've had a pretty good childhood. A lot of people are just in the middle. My childhood was kind of moderately messed up, moderately good. I'm in the middle. That's your average person. So your average person really needs that. But even people with good childhoods, they weren't perfect childhoods. You're going to have some subconscious programs in you that are making you struggle in some way, even though overall you're doing really great. So everyone should use this, try this out. Get yourself optimized. And when you do, you're going to say, wow, here's something I've struggled with for 30 years, 40 years, 20 years, whatever. And I'm not struggling with it anymore. And the change came like that with these methods. Try it out. It will change your life. And once you have tried it out and you've seen the process and you've experienced it, you will know what we've learned and what we're trying to teach everyone, that you truly do have more power than you know. That's our show. Thank you, everyone. Bye.